In an era long before written history, humanity was not what it appeared to be. They were not mere beings of flesh and bone, but creatures of untapped potential, capable of wielding powers that defied the natural laws of the world. Some could manipulate the elements with a flick of a finger, others could bend time and space, and a rare few could even alter the fabric of reality itself. The world was their playground, and their power seemed boundless. But with great power came great arrogance. As the ancient civilization flourished, its leaders grew more reckless. They sought to master not just the elements or the mind, but the very essence of life and death. They tampered with forces they couldn't comprehend, forces that were never meant to be controlled. The world began to tremble under the strain of their ambitions. The skies grew dark, the earth cracked, and oceans raged. Entire cities were swallowed by storms, and nature itself began to rebel. The cataclysm that followed was swift and brutal. A great war broke out among the rulers of this lost civilization, each determined to claim the ultimate power for themselves. But no one could control the forces they had awakened. As the war escalated, the damage to the world became irreversible. The very foundation of reality seemed to buckle under the weight of their conflict. It was clear that the world was on the brink of destruction. In a desperate bid to save what little was left, a group of the most powerful beings in the civilization convened. They were known as the Elders, beings who had once held the greatest power, but now sought only to prevent further ruin. After much deliberation, they decided on a drastic measure. They would erase all memory of these powers from humanity, burying the knowledge deep within the earth. They created a series of ancient scrolls, inscribed with symbols that would protect the world from ever recalling its true potential. The scrolls were hidden in secret locations, sealed away from the world. The Elders' decision was final. They made a pact with the earth itself, binding humanity's memory to the land and the stars. The power would remain dormant, locked away for eternity. Those who remembered would be silenced, their knowledge erased, until humanity had forgotten what it was capable of. And so, the world moved on. Centuries passed, and the ancient knowledge became little more than myth. The great powers that once defined humanity faded into obscurity. The legends of the old world, of gods who walked among men, and mortals who could alter the fabric of existence, were forgotten. But the stories lived on in whispered tales and forgotten dreams, carried by those who dared to believe in the impossible. Now, in the present day, humanity exists in ignorance of its true origins. They have become a species of ordinary beings, disconnected from the immense potential buried deep within them. But even in their ignorance, the faintest echoes of the lost powers stir beneath the surface. The world is changing, and the powers of the past are slowly beginning to awaken once more. This sets the stage for the mystery and adventure to come, while grounding the story in an ancient, forgotten past that still has the potential to influence the present. Let me know if you'd like any further adjustments. Ariane had always been drawn to the forgotten corners of history, the stories lost in time, the ones most people had long since abandoned. As a historian specializing in ancient civilizations, she spent her days sifting through old texts, deciphering scripts no one else cared to study. It was in one such dusty, forgotten archive that she stumbled upon the manuscript, a thin, weathered volume that had been buried beneath piles of ignored books. Its cover was made of a dark, brittle leather that seemed to hum with an ancient energy, and the title was inscribed in a script she had never seen before, one that twisted in unnatural patterns. Curiosity piqued, Ariane carefully opened the book, its pages fragile and yellowed with age. The symbols on the pages were alien, yet they stirred something deep within her, as though they were calling to her from a time long past. The words seemed to dance on the page, just out of reach of her understanding, but there was one thing she could read clearly: pray they never recall their power. It was a warning, a chilling one, and it sent a shiver down her spine. For the next few days, Ariane obsessively studied the manuscript. She pored over every page, trying to decode its meanings, but much of it eluded her. As she worked, something strange began to happen. She started to experience flashes of vivid, unexplainable visions. They were like fragments of memories, flickers of scenes she had never lived, voices she had never heard, and places she had never been. They would come unbidden, like distant dreams, and fade before she could fully comprehend them. At first, Ariane chalked it up to exhaustion, but the visions became more frequent, and they were too real to ignore. One evening, as she sat reading the manuscript by candlelight, she saw a figure in the corner of her eye. A fleeting image, a tall, shadowy figure, standing just beyond her reach. When she turned to look, it was gone, but the air felt charged with a strange energy, as if the world around her had shifted. Then, the first true sign of her awakening occurred. As she reached for a book on the shelf, her hand brushed against it, and the object, seemingly of its own accord, shifted slightly in her direction. Startled, Ariane pulled back, unsure of what had just happened, but the sensation lingered, as though the book had responded to her thoughts, or perhaps to something else entirely. The power, whatever it was starting to manifest within her. It was only the beginning. Over the following weeks, Ariane's abilities grew stronger. She could hear whispers, faint voices in the back of her mind, as though someone, or something, was trying to communicate with her. At first, she believed she was losing her grip on reality. But soon, the whispers grew clearer, and they began to form into thoughts and memories that weren't hers. She could feel the presence of ancient beings, their voices reverberating through her, urging her to remember, to awaken. A terrifying realization gripped her. The power she had stumbled upon wasn't just a story or a myth. It was real, and it was slowly unraveling within her. But with this realization came another. She was not alone. Across the world, others were starting to awaken as well. Ariane didn't know it yet, but the strange power coursing through her was stirring others. People who were beginning to feel the stirrings of a long-forgotten potential deep within themselves. And as the world began to change, the dangerous truths of the past were about to resurface, bringing with them a threat more powerful than Ariane could have ever imagined. This part expands on Ariane's growing realization of the ancient powers awakening within her. It sets the stage for the mysterious journey ahead and hints at the larger forces that are stirring. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments. Ariane's days had begun to blur together. Research, visions, and a growing sense that she was on the precipice of something monumental. The strange occurrences were no longer isolated. Objects around her would shift when she wasn't looking. And sometimes she could hear the faintest whispers, like voices just beyond her reach. The world felt different now, charged with an energy she couldn't explain. She was beginning to fear that the power buried deep inside her might be more dangerous than she had ever imagined. One morning, after a particularly unsettling vision, Ariane decided to visit the ancient library where she had found the manuscript. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover, that the answers were hidden somewhere within its walls. As she entered the dimly lit archive, the air seemed heavier, as if the very space was holding its breath. To her surprise, she wasn't alone. A figure emerged from the shadows. Lysander, a man she had never seen before, but whose presence immediately felt familiar. He was tall, with sharp features and dark, intense eyes. There was an aura about him, something ancient and unsettling, as if he, too, was connected to the very powers she had been experiencing. "I knew you would come," he said, his voice calm, yet carrying an undeniable weight. "You've awakened." Ariane froze, unsure of whether to run or to stay and demand answers. But something about Lysander's presence kept her rooted in place. His gaze was piercing, yet not threatening, as if he already knew everything about her, about the power she was struggling to understand. "You don't know me," Ariane said, her voice shaky. How do you know what's happening to me?" Lysander smiled, though it was a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I've been waiting for you, Ariane. You're not the only one who has begun to feel it. There are others scattered across the world. We are the awakened." The words hit her like a thunderclap. The awakened. The very name sent a chill through her. She had heard whispers of such a group in her research, but they were nothing more than legend. According to the stories, they were individuals who had somehow retained fragments of the ancient knowledge, people who had unlocked the dormant powers within themselves, though many had paid a terrible price for doing so. "What are you saying?" Ariane asked, struggling to make sense of the situation. "You've begun the process, whether you wanted to or not. The powers that were once forgotten are awakening inside you," Lysander explained. "And with that awakening comes a choice that will define the future of humanity." Ariane's heart raced. She had known something was different about her, but to hear it confirmed was both terrifying and exhilarating. Her mind reeled with questions, and for the first time, she wondered if the ancient manuscript had been more than just a warning. Was it a call to action? "The world is changing, Ariane," Lysander continued. "You and I, and those like us, are the key to either saving it or destroying it. The Silent Order knows this, and they're already moving to harness these powers for their own ends. If we don't act soon, the power will be unleashed, and there may be no stopping it." Ariane felt the weight of his words settle in her chest. She had no idea what she was about to get involved in, but one thing was clear: her life would never be the same. The world was on the brink of a new age, one that could bring either salvation or ruin. And it all started with her. This part introduces the concept of the awakened and builds the tension as Ariane begins to realize that she is not alone in this strange journey. Lysander's role as a guide to the ancient powers adds mystery, and the stakes are raised as the conflict with the Silent Order is revealed. Let me know if you'd like to refine anything further. The days following her meeting with Lysander were a whirlwind of confusion and discovery. Ariane found herself pulled deeper into a world she had only glimpsed through old texts and myth, one where the forgotten powers of humanity were stirring again. Lysander explained the complex history of the Awakened, a secret group of individuals who had survived the cataclysmic events of the past by retaining fragments of the lost knowledge. But there was another faction, one much darker, the Silent Order. "They're not like us," Lysander had said grimly. "They believe humanity's true potential must be unlocked at any cost. They see the power not as something to control, but as a tool to be wielded, and they will stop at nothing to claim it." Ariane couldn't help but feel a chill run down her spine. Lysander's words had weight, a reality she had yet to fully understand. The Silent Order, once a secretive sect, had been waiting for the moment when the powers of the ancients would rise again. And now that it was happening, they were ready to seize it for their own purposes, no matter the consequences. It wasn't long before Ariane learned just how dangerous the Silent Order could be. Their leader, Callan, was a man of striking presence, a figure of quiet power who had already begun assembling his followers, many of whom had already awakened their abilities. Callan was a charismatic figure, but there was something chilling in his calm demeanor. He spoke with the kind of certainty that only those who had tasted true power could possess. "They believe in the inevitable," Lysander explained one evening, as the two of them sat by a fire in their hidden sanctuary. "They think humanity's latent abilities should be brought to the forefront, to shape the world according to their vision. They don't care about the risks. All they care about is control." Ariane's mind raced with the implications. The Silent Order wasn't just a group of rogue individuals. They were a movement. They had infiltrated governments, organizations, and secret societies across the globe, all working toward one singular goal: to awaken and wield the powers that had once nearly destroyed the world. Then what happens to those who refuse to follow their vision? Ariane asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "They will be eliminated," Lysander said flatly. "The Silent Order doesn't tolerate dissent." Ariane's stomach churned at the thought. The Awakened had already started to gather, but they were still vastly outnumbered by the Order's growing influence. The Silent Order's reach stretched far beyond what she had initially realized. They had the means, the followers, and the ambition to reshape the world, starting with the most powerful individuals they could find. But there was one thing that still gave Ariane hope. The Silent Order, for all their strength, had underestimated the danger of fully awakening these powers. They believed the power to be a weapon, but they didn't understand its true nature. If the power was unleashed without caution, it could consume everything. Ariane realized that her role wasn't just to fight back against the Order. It was to keep the power in check, to make sure that it didn't destroy everything. As the tension between the two factions escalated, Ariane knew there was no turning back. The battle for humanity's future had begun, and she had a part to play in it. But with every step she took deeper into this world of power and secrets, the weight of her choices grew heavier. There were no easy answers, and soon, the lines between right and wrong would blur beyond recognition. This part reveals the emergence of the Silent Order as a serious threat and begins to establish the high stakes of Ariane's journey. It also introduces Callan, the leader of the Order, and deepens Ariane's understanding of the delicate balance between using and controlling the ancient powers. Let me know if you'd like to refine any details. The tension between the Awakened and the Silent Order was no longer a quiet undercurrent. It was a storm on the horizon. Every day, Ariane felt the weight of the decisions she had yet to make. Her power was growing, pulsing inside her, threatening to burst free. She had learned to control it in small ways, moving objects, sensing the emotions of those around her. But every time she tapped into it, she felt the pull of something darker, something uncontrollable. Lysander had warned her, the more you awaken, the harder it becomes to distinguish between what is you and what is the power. You have to remain vigilant, or it will consume you. But vigilance was becoming more difficult with each passing day. The Silent Order was closing in, and Ariane could feel their presence growing stronger. They had begun targeting cities and communities where signs of awakening had been detected. It wasn't long before Lysander received word of an impending attack on a small village not far from their sanctuary, a village that housed a number of awakened individuals who had been living in hiding. Ariane's heart clenched. She knew the Order would stop at nothing to seize those with powers. They didn't care who they hurt, as long as they could harness what was inside. Lysander made the decision to mobilize their group and protect the village, but Ariane couldn't shake the feeling that it was all happening too fast, too recklessly. They were about to face the Silent Order head-on for the first time, and she had no idea if they were ready. The night of the attack arrived swiftly. The Awakened gathered in a makeshift camp on the outskirts of the village, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. Lysander gave a brief, urgent speech, urging everyone to stay calm and focused. But Ariane could see the fear in their eyes. They were outnumbered, and their only advantage was the power within them. That, and the fact that the Silent Order still underestimated the true nature of what they were dealing with. As the first shadowy figures of the Silent Order emerged from the trees, Ariane felt her heart race. The air around her buzzed with energy, and her senses sharpened, everything feeling more intense. For a moment, it was as if the world stood still. She could hear the footsteps of the enemy approaching, each step feeling like it was in sync with the rapid beat of her pulse. "Stay close," Lysander said, his voice low and steady. "We can't let them overwhelm us." The first strike came without warning. A group of Silent Order operatives charged toward them, armed with weapons that seemed to crackle with a strange energy. Ariane didn't have time to think. Instinct took over. She raised her hands, and the air around her rippled. In a flash, the ground beneath her enemy's feet cracked open, sending them sprawling. She had no idea how she had done it, but the result was undeniable. The Silent Order members were stunned, momentarily thrown off balance. The feeling of power surging through her was intoxicating, but it was also terrifying. She could sense the danger of letting it go unchecked, but at the same time, she knew it was her only chance to protect the village. and the people she had come to care about. But then, something changed. The ground began to tremble beneath her feet, and the air grew thick with an oppressive, malevolent force. Ariane realized, too late, that the Order wasn't just here to fight. They had come prepared. The battle was only beginning. In this part, Ariane faces her first major test in battle, using her abilities in an intense and dangerous situation. The stakes are raised as the Silent Order reveals their true strength and willingness to use whatever means necessary to control the powers. Ariane's internal struggle with her power also grows more intense, setting the stage for the larger conflict ahead. Let me know if you would like any adjustments. The battle raged on, and Ariane could barely keep up. Her mind raced as she tried to control the powers surging through her, but the more she used them, the more it felt like they were using her. Each burst of energy left her drained, her body trembling with the aftershocks of something far more dangerous than anything she had ever imagined. She had only begun to touch the surface of her abilities, yet she could already feel the weight of the power pulling at her, threatening to overtake her. Around her, the fight continued. Lysander moved with purpose, his own powers flashing in bursts of light and energy as he struck down the Silent Order agents one by one. The other Awakened fought valiantly, but there were too many of the Order. They were well-trained, well-coordinated, and each member seemed to have a different way of manipulating the very fabric of reality, making them formidable opponents. Ariane's hands shook as she tried to summon the power to protect the village, but her control was slipping. Her breath came in ragged gasps, and she could feel the edges of her vision blur as the world around her seemed to distort. It wasn't just the physical exhaustion. It was the pull of the ancient forces, something deep within her that whispered promises of unimaginable strength, but at a cost. In the distance, a dark figure approached, cutting through the chaos with ease. Callan, the leader of the Silent Order. His presence was like a shadow, stretching over the battlefield, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. His eyes locked onto hers, and Ariane felt a chill settle in her bones. He was different from the others, more than just a man. There was something ancient in him, something familiar. "You've begun to awaken," Callan's voice echoed in her mind, his tone cold and knowing. "But you don't understand the full extent of what you're dealing with, do you?" Ariane's heart skipped a beat. "What do you want from us?" She managed to gasp, struggling to hold herself upright. "To use you, of course," Callan said simply, as though the answer were obvious. "You are the key to the power we seek. You and those like you will either join us or perish." The words struck Ariane like a physical blow. She could feel the power within her pulse in response to Callan's words, as though it recognized him. He had known this power, perhaps even harnessed it in the past. But now it was hers to control, for better or worse. She wasn't sure she could handle it, but there was no turning back. Before she could react, Callan extended his hand, and the ground beneath her feet cracked open. Ariane tried to move, but the air was thick with energy, and her body refused to obey. Callan's powers were unlike anything she had felt before, tighter, more controlled. He was a master of this dark force, and in that moment, Ariane realized the true cost of her own awakening. She had no choice but to fight or be consumed. As the air crackled with tension, Ariane's eyes met Lysander's across the battlefield. He was struggling, but his resolve was unshaken. It was clear now. This wasn't just a battle for survival. This was a war for the soul of humanity itself, and the price of victory might be more than Ariane was willing to pay. This part focuses on the intense personal struggle Ariane faces as she uses her powers in battle, and introduces Callan as the leader of the Silent Order. The price of power becomes clearer as Ariane realizes the stakes of the war she is now part of. Let me know if you'd like any changes or adjustments. Ariane could feel her strength waning, her energy draining with every flicker of power she unleashed. The battlefield had turned into a war zone, the air thick with tension and crackling energy. The Silent Order wasn't pulling back. They were relentless, and with Callan leading them, Every step they took felt calculated, deliberate. They were not here just to win. They were here to dominate. Her body screamed in protest, but Ariane fought against it. She couldn't afford to give in. Not with the village at stake, not with the power she had barely begun to control threatening to slip beyond her grasp. As Callan's gaze locked onto hers again, something within her stirred, a force she hadn't felt before. Familiar, yet distant, ancient. It was as if the power inside her recognized him. And in that instant, Ariane understood something terrifying. Callan wasn't just trying to recruit her. He was trying to break her, to make her an extension of his will. "You're not ready," he called out to her, his voice floating through the chaos like an ominous whisper. "You can't control it. It will consume you, just as it consumed all those before you." Ariane's breath caught in her throat. His words were a sharp reminder of the danger she was facing, not just from the Silent Order, but from the power itself. It was a double-edged sword, and every moment she spent wielding it felt like it could slip out of her control. She wasn't sure how much longer she could hold on. Lysander, who had been fighting valiantly beside her, now looked back toward her with urgency. "Ariane, you have to hold on," he shouted, his voice breaking through the haze of the battle. "If you don't, it will all be lost." But his words only seemed to drive the power inside her further. The pulse of energy that had been simmering within her intensified, her heart beating faster with every moment. It wasn't just strength. There was a hunger in the power, a desire to be unleashed, and it was growing stronger with every passing second. Ariane had once believed she could control it, but now she felt as if it was controlling her. With one final, desperate cry, she reached deep within herself, trying to grasp onto whatever remained of her will. The air around her shimmered as she fought to push the power back, to stop it from overtaking her. She could feel the boundary between herself and the power thinning, the lines blurring. If she let go completely, she knew the destruction would be total. Callan smiled, sensing the weakening of her resolve. "You see, you can't fight it. Not for long." But then something unexpected happened. Just as Ariane felt as though she would be consumed by the power, she remembered the one thing that had kept her grounded. Lysander. His voice had been a constant reminder that she was not alone in this fight. It wasn't just about her and the power. It was about the people she cared for, the lives she had sworn to protect. The force inside her began to change. It wasn't a violent, consuming energy anymore. It was focused, controlled, a perfect balance between strength and purpose. With a final push of will, Ariane directed the energy outward, creating a shockwave that sent the Silent Order agents tumbling backward. But Callan wasn't finished yet. The battle was far from over, and Ariane knew that the hardest test was still to come. The power had not yet shown its full potential, and neither had he. This part shows Ariane's struggle with the power inside her near collapse under its weight, and the moment when she finds the strength to push back. The battle continues to escalate, with Callan's influence growing stronger. Let me know if you'd like to refine anything. The battlefield was eerily quiet after the shockwave. The dust settled in thick clouds, and the once churning chaos stilled for a moment, giving Ariane a rare chance to breathe. Her hands trembled from the effort, and her body ached from the exertion. But despite the toll, the power inside her was still there, still present, pulsing just beneath the surface. She knew it was waiting for her to make the next move. Lysander rushed to her side, his face etched with concern but his eyes glowing with a kind of pride. "You did it," he said, his voice steady despite the battle's aftermath. "You held it back." But Ariane didn't feel victorious. The power inside her was a living thing, demanding more with each passing moment, and she could sense that she had only delayed the inevitable. The true test was yet to come. Across the battlefield, Callan stood, unfazed by the wave of destruction Ariane had just unleashed. His calm demeanor was unnerving, and the twisted smile on his lips only made her feel more uneasy. It was as if he had been expecting this moment all along, as if it were part of his plan. You think you've won." Callan's voice rang out, a cold mockery of everything they had just fought for. "You've only just begun to understand the power you wield, and it's already slipping through your fingers." Ariane's heart hammered in her chest. The words cut deep. Callan wasn't wrong. She had only touched the surface of the ancient forces inside her. Every time she used the power, it felt like a gamble, a balance between saving everything and losing herself. "I won't join you," she said through gritted teeth, the words coming out with a strength she didn't feel. "I won't let you control this power. I will fight for humanity, for what's left of it." Callan's eyes narrowed, his smile fading. "You misunderstand, Ariane. You have no choice. The power is already inside you, and you will come to understand that soon enough. You can either accept it and stand with us, or you will be destroyed by it." Lysander stepped forward, his hand gently resting on Ariane's shoulder. "Don't listen to him. You have the strength to make your own path." Ariane turned toward him, her mind swirling with the weight of the decision before her. Callan was right about one thing. She couldn't deny the power anymore. It was part of her, and its call was growing louder. She had tasted its potential, and she knew the world would never be the same again, regardless of which side won. Her mind raced as she looked back at the Silent Order, their presence still looming, waiting for her decision. But there was something deep within her, a feeling that had only grown stronger since meeting Lysander, that told her the true battle wasn't just for power. It was for control. Control over what she became, over whether she would allow herself to be consumed or fight to maintain her humanity. With a deep breath, Ariane raised her